Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you very much for having me here today. Delegate Edmonds, now that I know the litmus test about whether a politician or a professional here, I think I'll take this off. And I do that symbolically because I'm not a politician. I'm professional in terms of having been involved in workforce development and creating young people with skills or helping them develop those skills. And this transcends politics. This is too important to the Commonwealth to be in the arena of politics, although that's an important element of making sure we get the proper leadership and funds. It was great being here, being invited here today. Betty, Bill, thank you very much for this opportunity. Bill and I shared some comments at lunch. One of the great things about this facility here is it's bubbled up from the community, and that's similar to what happened down in the peninsula. The city of Hampton, working with the jurisdictions around it, actually floated the bond to build a facility similar to this down in the city of Hampton. And there's a lot more ownership when it's built by the community, and it bubbles up from there. Now, I was asked to address in a few minutes here economic development in terms of how workforce development supports that initiative, and particularly down here in this region. Now, having said that, I want to pass on the greetings from the governor and the lieutenant governor, because as you know, they made a promise during their campaign they'd be down here at least once a month, along with their staff members being down here. And I swear I have city pins and town pins from all over the southern part of Virginia now. As a matter of fact, I was asking if there was one from South Boston, and they said they're going to mint one real quick. But anyhow, that's not just a bumper sticker slogan about economic development and jobs creation. That's something that the governor meant, and that's something that he's following through on, and it was my privilege to be appointed to the commission. And we're in the final phases of the subgroups putting together all their recommendations. As a matter of fact, they're due today, and I was up until about 4 a.m. this morning negotiating the final words on our recommendations to make sure that it was a unanimous recommendation to the full commission. And that commission will hold a full session on the 30th, and from there they will be presented by the Lieutenant Governor, Bob Sled, to the governor to consider, particularly in light of the upcoming General Assembly. Now, it's easy for me to talk about economic development and workforce development because I think we all recognize that's two sides of the same coin. You cannot have economic development if you don't have a skilled workforce. And without a skilled workforce, it's very hard attracting the types of businesses into a locality, a region, or the state without that connection. Now, in talking about workforce development, I think we all recognize, just by the nature of all the individuals that are in the room, it's a very complex subject, many moving parts, and there is no set plan for every situation. It's a matter of how we use the various partners in the room to accommodate the needs of the individual businesses, either those incumbent businesses we're trying to expand or help expand, or those businesses we're trying to attract into this place. But there are some givens. One of the givens in talking about workforce development is our educational and training system. And by that I'm talking about early childhood development, K-12, post-secondary opportunities in terms of 2- and 4-year degrees and beyond. Also the incumbent employer component of that. And finally, your adult literacy and adult education. In other words, lifelong learning. That's fundamental to workforce development. Quite frankly, we wouldn't be talking about workforce development as a discipline unto itself if, in fact, that continuous lifelong learning process were working at 100% efficiency. Now, you're very fortunate in this area in that you've got a great public school system in this county. Paul and I have known one another for a number of years, and Paul's been a leader in many of the initiatives, particularly in dual enrollment, which is fundamentally important, that transition between secondary and post-secondary. You're also very fortunate in that you have 2 great community colleges down here. Danville does the primary servicing of the area in here, and Dr. Carlisle Ramsey is one of the most engaged presidents I know as far as working with local businesses and workforce development, and he and his staff, I think Jeff Arnold's here, are engaged with the local businesses to make sure that they're, number one, aware of the capabilities and the mission of the community colleges and workforce development, make sure they're aware of it, and then engage the business community to use those facilities and that capability, and more importantly, help the community college get the curriculum tailored to the business community's need. You also have the Southside Community College, and Dr. John Cabin is one of the leaders in the middle college movement. I think you have 4 different campuses down here in this particular workforce investment area aimed at those people that dropped out of high school, but we now need to get back on track. Because I mentioned adult literacy. We in the Commonwealth, of workforce, you know, there's about 8 million of us, a workforce of about 4 million of us. There's over 500,000 of us that don't have a high school education. And I'm talking about adults after high school. 400,000 of those roughly are in our workforce. That is a population that is just as important as the population we're trying to push into 4-year universities, because that's the potential of, if they can raise their level of education and their skill levels, that has even a greater impact than that young person coming out of college with that that diploma. Now, they're equally important, but we can't go after one and forget about the other. The 400,000 people out there that don't have a high school diploma have to have attention, and John Cabin is one of those people that's leading that effort. So you've got a good balance between the community colleges. You also have facilities like this, and Bill, my hat's off to you and the people that have been involved, and Betty for the leadership you provided in getting this type of facility. And it's great seeing that parking lot out there being full. I'm told it's like that every day. Now, that's not necessarily good for the students, but first come, first served. It gets them here earlier and gets them in the resource center using the facilities. That's great, and we need to keep that going. Because on our educational and training system, that is as much a cultural, societal issue as it is an educational issue. We have to believe as adults in the importance of training and education and skills development, so that message is passed on to our young people. So in fact, they stay in high school. Now, you've got a good record here. You're well above the state average on retention and the number of students going into high school. And I'm talking about the county's system, and I think that holds true for this region. Fundamentally important. The other components of our workforce development are the various agencies that are working in those one-stops. And you recently, I think it was middle of last year, Deborah was down here for the opening of your comprehensive one-stop. You have a very good system down here. What's most important are the agencies that are in those one-stops, be it social services, rehabilitative services, the employment commission, the community college. All of those players are playing well with one another. And here's what I mean by that. As a member of the business community, nothing frustrates you more than having a bunch of people that are supposed to be doing the same thing in a unified manner coming to you wanting to tell you about their individual program. From a business standpoint, all we care about is that there is an infrastructure in place that has got pipelines in place that's going to get us the skilled, trainable people that we need. Now, we have compassion. I don't mean to say we're not compassionate, but as a business, what we want to know is that the support system is training people to meet our needs, both current and future. And that means that we want to talk in that level, that playing field.